everyone, happy Sunday. Hope y'all are having a good weekend. Welcome back. It's been a little while. I thought, the last few weeks have been a little nutty. Let's go back to basics. So I've been doing a lot of recipe development for a lot of my really good substitutions. So like gluten-free, dairy-free, vegan, nut-free, soy-free. And so today we're going to be doing gluten-free, dairy-free chocolate chip cookies. I've been working on this recipe for a little while now, and I am so excited to say I love this one. Like, I think I really nailed it. You'll see how they turn out. They're beautiful. They're the perfect amount of chewy in the center, crispy on the edges. They look like a perfect coffee shop or like small town bakery cookie. They're super easy to make. They do take some advanced work because you do want to chill the dough for a while. So we'll talk a little bit about that shortly. But I'm so pumped. I'm so pumped for you guys to try these. But first, oh my gosh, who is so excited about these? It is about time. Only took until 2021 to do a gluten-free Oreo. So this came out pretty recently. I think it debuted about a month ago. And I got it at a local grocery store, like a non-chain. But I know Target carries them as well. And they're doing gluten-free regular and double stuffed Oreos. Unpopular opinion, I prefer the regular. I like the higher ratio of cookie to cream. But if you like double stuff, have no fear. They make these as well. We're going to be doing a taste test. And something else cool that I picked up is for spring, the new M&M's eggs that are mystery flavor. So it's a mystery mix. You guess which flavor's in every bite. Everyone's a different one. You don't know what's in it. And it comes with milk chocolate, peanut butter, and double chocolate. I don't know what double chocolate means. Maybe it's like dark and milk, but it might also be white and dark or white and milk. But I guess we'll see when we taste it. I'm going to taste these another time. I want to figure out what I want to put these in first and then do a taste test before a recipe. So I'm really excited about this mystery mix. All right, I know that notification sounds annoying, so I'm going to turn that off on my computer. Sorry for the delay, one moment, y'all. I know, real fun to watch me do this. All right, okay, cool, that should be off. I'm back. Now for the taste test. So as I mentioned, I wanted to try out these gluten-free Oreos. I'm super excited. So I am personally not gluten-free, but I do try to cut back on how much gluten I have, just because I've noticed sometimes when I have certain things like beer or bread or cookies, I don't feel amazing. But regardless if you're gluten-free or not, I'm really excited that Oreo is making an option for everyone, so everyone can partake in Oreos. I love these new packages. I mean, not new, they've been around for a couple of years, but I like that they've transitioned to every package having this. It smells exactly like a regular Oreo. It looks really similar. I'd say that cream is actually even like slightly less than a typical Oreo. Maybe I'm just dreaming because all the limited edition flavors are like overstuffed. It smells super good. It's a little bit rounder, as weird as that is to say. So it falls apart more easily. You know what this tastes like? I don't know if they still make these or if this was like a 90s and early 2000s kid thing. But remember the Oreo thin 100-calorie packs they made? They were basically like hexagonal Oreo crisps with no cream, like not sandwich cookies. That's like exactly what these taste like. So I personally like those. Not a bad thing at all. Just definitely a little bit different than a classic Oreo. So I'd say it's like a little bit less deep chocolate. Deep like dark cocoa flavor. Honestly, they're really satisfying. Like a very good gluten-free sandwich cookie. It has that like little bit of film at the end that you kind of get like a stickiness from some gluten-free flours, but it's not gummy. It doesn't like melt weird. It doesn't get all chewy. I like it. I would say like They nailed it. I think the only way it could get better is if it had a slightly deeper dark cocoa flavor. So I'll give it like a 9 out of 10. But I'm impressed, and I'm excited to use these in recipes because I think in other things, like I often put Oreos into chocolate cookies or brownies. So in other chocolate recipes, it's gonna be perfect. I'm super excited to play with those. And then these we'll try next time, the mystery mix M&Ms. Sorry, M&M eggs, they're like the really big ones. So Easter candy is the thing that's out now. I also have some cheesecake flavored M&Ms to try out and use in a recipe. I'm trying to figure out what to use them in. I don't love white chocolate, especially fake white chocolate, which they don't really have cocoa butter in them. They're usually just like sugar and milk fat. So try to figure out what to use those in. But that was awesome. Okay, I'm gonna wash my hands. Oh, Lester CB, you're pumped too. Yeah, I'm super pumped about the gluten-free Oreos. I'm hopeful they'll make some other flavors too if these are popular. Like maybe they'll do the golden or like red velvet or peanut butter pie. I would love if they got the cookie recipe down for the other non-chocolate cookies. I feel like that would expand their line so much. All right, let's bake some cookies. So as I mentioned, these take a while in terms of rest. This is a super easy recipe. You'll see it comes together in like 10 minutes. It's not hard. The thing you have to be patient on is chilling the dough. So I've tried this a few times already, and my best advice would be to make the dough, let it chill in the fridge for about a half hour so it's pliable, roll it into dough balls, and then pop it in the freezer for minimum, absolute minimum of 2 hours. I know some people say that, but I did it for like an hour and it's still like spread really big, which if you like a lacy, super thin, crispy cookie, totally fine. But if you're like me and like a little chew in the center, I would recommend that you chill these for more than 2 hours. So this recipe is great because you could actually put it in the freezer and chill this dough for, gosh, you can chill it for 2 to 3 days. I have a batch that I made last weekend that I've been pulling out of the freezer every so often and making 1 or 2 at a time. And they bake so well directly from frozen. So even though it takes a while to like get them to the point where they're ready to bake, once you've done it, you can have these in the freezer for days. And it's perfect if you just want to make a couple cookies at a time, or you have an event coming up and you don't have time the day before to bake these. I'm a really big fan of just like pop in the oven recipes. Ah, Margot and Max. Hi, AJ. Hi, Margot and Max. I'm so glad that you've joined me. I'm really excited to bake with you guys today. Thank you all for being here. I'm really excited. I noticed like my YouTube's gotten more traction lately and there's more folks coming to stream. So thank you all so much for supporting me. All right, so super easy, similar to any other chocolate chip cookie recipes. This starts with butter. In this case, I'm gonna use dairy-free butter because I want these to be dairy-free and gluten-free. I'll note that these cookies are also soy-free, but they are not nut-free. They do contain almond flour, and I'm working on a variation that doesn't contain almond flour, but I'll talk about the reason why I use that in a moment. All right, so I took the Earth Balance soy-free buttery sticks, and I'm gonna do a half recipe because like I said, I actually still have some cookies in the freezer. So I don't wanna make too many and have them go to waste. Make a half recipe, give some to my neighbors. And for a half recipe, I'm gonna use 4 tablespoons. So a full would be 8 tablespoons or a full stick. Cut it into chunks. I've been leaving it on the counter for like 20, 30 minutes just to start to come to room temperature because it will be a lot easier to cream with the sugars. So I'm gonna pop this into my stand mixer. I'm also so excited. You see this here? If you've watched my other streams, you notice I usually have a red KitchenAid. They finally got the exact one I want back in stock. This is the ProLine 7-quart bowl lift KitchenAid. So it's got a more powerful motor. My old one was only 4.5 quart capacity. This is 7 quart. And it's got the lift bowl with a crank instead of the tilt head, which limits the amount of moving sideways and like wiggling it does. My old KitchenAid, if you turn it on super high, sometimes it'll kind of jump around the counter. This one is quieter and stays put. It does a fantastic job. You'll notice I'm even making a half recipe of cookies and it's still doing a really, really good job of creaming butter. So even with small amounts. So I'm just gonna get this going at like a medium-low speed to start to break up the butter. And in the meantime, I'm going to start weighing and measuring out the sugar. So if you've joined me before, you know that I am a big fan of weight measurements. So I'll give you options for using volume, like cups, for example. But I really think just like investing in a really inexpensive digital scale. Like literally even when it's like $10 will do the trick. I have this one here. I have a couple of them. It's great. It measures grams and ounces. It's super, super convenient. I find that you get a more consistent product week after week, bake after bake. And so I love measuring via weight. So just gonna get this on the scale. And we're, again, making a half recipe. So you usually use about 3/4 cup of granulated sugar, which is 150 grams. But here I'm gonna use 75 grams because I'm using a half recipe. That's the other benefit of scales, is you don't have to do the like mental math of like, what is a half of a 3/4 cup? It's a lot easier to just weigh it that way. All right, and then brown sugar. So this is gonna look really similar to a classic chocolate chip cookie. Brown sugar, white sugar, butter, egg, all of those wonderful things. And for the brown sugar, it would also be a 3/4 cup for a full recipe, or 165 grams. So here I'm gonna be using about 82 to 83 grams. The other thing, it's easier to measure brown sugar this way because you don't have to like pack it into your measuring device. Because packed brown sugar, when you do measure this using cups, you want to make sure you actually pack it into the cup. Otherwise, you're not going to get enough. If you're just like lightly pushing it into the cup, you're not going to get enough brown sugar. All right, now that the butter is starting to break down, I'm going to throw the sugar in there. It also came, my KitchenAid came with this handy dandy flour and sugar splatter cover. I'm super messy, so I need this. You'll notice that I'm going to get stuff everywhere regardless, but having this on top of my mixer makes it so much easier than just like pouring flour in and letting it pop up everywhere. So I'm gonna turn this up a little and grab a spatula. Scrape a little bit of the butter down. The one thing I don't have yet is I just have a regular paddle attachment. KitchenAid does make the one that has like a spatula edge, a silicone edge, and it helps lift stuff so you don't have to stop your mixer and do what I'm doing. I will get that in due time. It's a helpful tool to have, but I did just drop a lot of money on the mixer, so we're gonna wait. That's also a great tip. If you're looking for really good deals on KitchenAid mixers, Bed Bath & Beyond. So most companies like Williams-Sonoma or like other major appliance brands, including the KitchenAid website, will not let you apply coupons to KitchenAid mixers. Bed Bath & Beyond does. And as you know, you can always get a 20% coupon. So I got this for 20% off, which if you're gonna spend like upwards of $500 on a mixer, that's a huge saving. All right, we're gonna let that cream for a moment. And while that's going, I'm gonna grab vanilla bean paste. Again, I love this one from Trader Joe's. It's just a more concentrated version of vanilla extract that has the actual like bean insides in it. You can also use regular vanilla, just double the amount. So for this recipe, I usually use a teaspoon. Because I'm using vanilla paste, I'm gonna use a half teaspoon. And because it's a half recipe, I'm only gonna use a 1/4 teaspoon. That's enough to get a good amount of vanilla flavor in there. And then if you've followed along with any of my recipes before, whether on LiveStream or on my blog on junkjules.com or on my Instagram at junkjules, you've noticed I talk a lot about corn syrup and how it's kind of a magical ingredient. So when you want to get the perfect chew to a cookie, and especially if you're working with gluten-free, vegan, a lot of other substitutes that kind of struggle to bind with certain other ingredients, corn syrup is your best friend. I know corn syrup gets a bad rap. It's just another form of sugar. Any sugar in moderation is fine, right? I'm a firm believer in sugar is delicious and great, and we eat it for a reason. Obviously, you're not going to eat it all day, every day. But if you're using a little bit of corn syrup in something, it's no different than sugar. And these are cookies, so I'm going to use corn syrup. So I'll use a tablespoon for a full recipe, but because I'm making a half batch, I'm going to use a half tablespoon. And you'll notice I kind of have a point where I just pour things in. I've made this recipe so many times that I can eyeball it. And also something like corn syrup or vanilla, if you slightly under or over add, not the end of the world. It's okay if you're not super precise with something like this. All right, I'm gonna pause and scrape it down again. It's getting really well combined now. So even this like tiny amount I have in this huge mixer it's working really well. This mixer exceeded my expectations. I needed a bigger volume one because Junk Jules is my business and I do a lot of orders, especially around holidays. This has like changed my life already. All right, now while that's going, We're also going to grab one last thing to go in, the wet ingredients. Oh my god, I thought I lost an egg. I'm like, how do you lose an egg? That's impossible. So 1 large or extra large egg. You would use 2 if you're using full batch. And I'm a really big fan of organic. I don't necessarily believe the hype that you have to eat organic everything. There can still be pesticides in organic foods. Just wash all your produce really well. Either way, if you're buying conventional or organic, it's often not worth the cost to go for organic. But with eggs, I find that it is. I find the yolks are so much richer, more like orangey yellow in color. They're fattier. They do so much of a better job of making the recipe what you want it to be. So I splurge for organic eggs. And honestly, usually like Trader Joe's or other places like that, it's maybe 50 cents to $1 more for a dozen. So for me, it's worth it. All right, so adding my 1 egg, and I'm showing off. Single-handed break. Again, I've been doing this a lot for a very long time. Scrape it down one more time, and then we'll get the dry ingredients going. So every so often you might hear a little bit of whining. That is my very needy dog. Oh, so sad. Flapjack. He's a very good boy, but he's got like really intense separation anxiety. And so even if I like put him in the other room with toys and water and treats, he gets sad if he can't see me. But if I had him up here, he would probably be like up trying to get on the counter barking at me. So yes, boof boof. Crystal, hi Crystal. Yes, boof boof. He doesn't need to be involved in this. All right, so that's going the flours. So this is what makes or breaks a gluten-free baked good, right? Especially cookies. I have experimented with so many different varieties and brands, and I'm currently working on a nut-free version of these cookies. But for now, I found that the absolute best combination of flours, super fine almond flour. So this is Bob's Red Mill. I use Bob's Red Mill or Trader Joe's. They're very similar. You want like a, not almond meal, like flour. You want it to be super fine because it needs to hydrate from all the wet ingredients and just like melt into the dough. You don't want to like feel that graviness. That's the other reason that I highly recommend making these way in advance and letting them sit for hours, is because the dough hydrates better and the almond flour is less noticeable. Like when I baked these cookies after only like an hour of freezing, they were a little bit gritty. And then once I waited till the next day to bake them, they were perfect. All right, so we're gonna use 50 grams. And I'm notoriously bad at not measuring because I always use weight, but I know some of you all don't have scales. So we're actually gonna measure it and see what 50 grams comes out to. Let's start with 1/3 cup. I feel like that seems similar. Oh, it's close. Okay, so 50 grams is about a 1/2 cup. So this is a half recipe. You'd usually use a cup of almond flour or 100 grams. And then your cup for cup baking flour. So make sure to find a gluten-free flour substitute that has a gum in it, like xanthan gum or boar gum. I tend to use Domata brand. I'll show you. This one. That's mostly rice flour and tapioca starch in most of my bakes, but in cookies, I found that it's like a little bit too light. Like I recently made cookies with all this, and it was like, it came out so airy. It was odd. Like this would be great for bread or something else you want to rise. Like I've used it for gluten-free cinnamon rolls, and it's amazing. Don't necessarily recommend it as much for cookies. So Bob's Red Mill, which is great because this is more easily accessible. You can get this online. Most grocery stores carry it. Target sometimes carries it, and it's a little cheaper than Domata. So this is great. This one is, yeah, it's rice flour, potato starch, sorghum, tapioca, and xanthan gum. So because it has the sorghum and the potato, and not just tapioca and rice, it's a little bit chewier, a little bit denser. I'm a super big fan. So you would use 215 grams if you're making a full batch, but because I'm doing a half batch, I'm gonna do about 107 grams. So again, I'll measure it for you guys. It's a 1/3 cup. It's gonna be about a cup, I think, or maybe less. Yeah, a little less. Okay, so you're gonna use about 3/4 a cup for a half recipe, so like 1.5 cups if you're making a full recipe. So the ratio is basically 2 to 1. 2 of the 1-to-1 baking flour, and then 1 part almond flour. Big fan of this. You don't necessarily need to sift, especially because almond flour does sometimes get caught a little bit in if you have a really fine sifter. I'll just use a fork or a whisk to get any major lumps out and make sure it gets well combined. All right, now, final few dry ingredients. Salt. I like to kind of over salt my cookies. I'm going to use a full teaspoon for a half recipe. I know some people like to use a lot less. Salt's important for obviously activating baking flour and baking powder and baking soda. But I also like a saltier cookie. You'll notice I salt like all my cookies. Then we're going to use a 1/4 teaspoon of baking soda and about a 1/2 teaspoon of baking powder. So I use a little bit more baking soda and baking powder in gluten-free cookies than I would in others, just because they do have a tendency to get really dense and fall kind of flat. And then my final secret ingredient, cinnamon. So if you don't like cinnamon, you can leave this out, but I do find that with most cookies, especially if you're doing gluten-free, where they sometimes have a tendency to have like a bitter taste to some of the flours, the cinnamon really nicely balances out and gives it kind of like a depth. I do it in my classic chocolate chip cookies as well. I think it gives it almost like, it's gonna sound weird. Some people age their cookies. They leave their cookie dough in the fridge for like days to let the flavors develop. And I feel like cinnamon kind of cuts that corner and helps give it that flavor pretty quickly. Just because it's that like dark, deep, rich, sweet, smoky flavor. So that's all nicely combined. I'm gonna go ahead and pour it into the wet ingredients. Just go all at once because, again, I have a huge mixer now. And this is a small amount of flour. So with this particular recipe of gluten-free flours, no need to overmix. Just mix it until it's well combined. And then the last step, of course, can't have chocolate chip cookies without chocolate chips. So I have 2 kinds here. If you're going strictly soy-free or you have nut or dairy allergies, enjoy life. I've talked about these a bunch. They're most accessible on the market. Target usually carries them. You can get them online. They're not cheap. They tend to be about $5 a bag, depending on where you get them. But they're great. They're really, really high quality chocolate. Completely allergen friendly. It's just sugar and cocoa butter. So I'm going to use a mix because I have mini chips here. And then I have semi-sweet chocolate chips from Trader Joe's, which I believe these do have soy, but they are dairy free. So, my really intensive measuring. I'm going to use a handful of each. And then if it's not enough, I'll add more. I'm a really big fan of lots of chocolate. God, I love chocolate. All right. Now just a super quick scrape here, and then throw the chocolate chips in and do a quick mix. And we'll see if that looks like it's enough. Now I'm gonna put a few more. You can't have too much chocolate, right? All right, that looks good. Okay. So, dun dun dun. Okay, dun dun dun. Here is the dough. You'll see it's pretty wet. It's a wet dough. As I mentioned, letting it sit in the fridge and then ultimately the freezer is really helpful to getting the almond flour to hydrate. And so your dough will be a lot less sticky once the almond flour is hydrated, and also the chilling, and also the fridge helps chill the butter. So this will be a lot less sticky and a lot easier to work with and make into dough balls. So I also really like using a kitchen scale to weigh out my dough and ensure uniform cookies. If you don't have one, you can use a tablespoon or an ice cream scoop, but I have found it does help me get precision as someone with a baking business, because I don't want to give someone cookies that are wildly different sizes, right? I'm giving you 12 large cookies. I want them to all be 50 or 60 or 70, however many grams they are when they are dough. So when they're baked, they're the same size. All right, so this looks so good. I just want to eat it all. But apparently you shouldn't eat raw eggs. Can you eat raw gluten-free flour? That is a fair question I have, because I know that there's risk of like salmonella or certain other bacterial infections if you eat raw like wheat flour. But I wonder if you can eat raw gluten-free flour, because if it's just like rice and tapioca, like you can eat that raw. It's not great. I mean, it might give you a stomach ache, but like I don't think it would make you sick, right? I should look that up. I eat raw dough anyway. Don't tell anyone. All right, so as I mentioned, this will go in the fridge for 20 to 30 minutes before we roll. So I rarely do this, but I've actually done some movie magic, and I've made some in advance, so you don't have to sit and wait with me for hours. So I have some cookie dough currently in the freezer. So as I mentioned, what you want to do is the dough that's in the fridge, I'll let it rest for like 30 minutes. I'll roll it into balls that are all even sized. If you have a scale, I like to keep it around 45 grams for a cookie that's about 3 to 4 inches in diameter, like a good medium-sized cookie. And then throw them in the freezer with a little kosher or flaky sea salt on top of them. Let them sit for at least 2 hours. I would honestly recommend overnight. This is a great recipe again. Make a day in advance and then just pop in the oven when you're ready. It'll be done in like 15 minutes. So I'm going to preheat the oven to 375. If you were with me for the saga back in December, our oven stopped working in the middle of the live stream, which of course it did. And the pilot wasn't working effectively. And now it has been fixed. All the parts have been replaced. And my oven is actually more accurate. It used to be about 10 degrees off. If I wanted something baked at 375, I'd have to put it up to 385. Now it seems to work at that temperature. Occasionally it's a little hotter on top, so I'm kind of playing with the placement of the racks, but we're figuring it out. As I mentioned, you should always test your oven if you move into a new place or get it serviced. Make sure to put an oven thermometer in there, let it sit for a good like 15-20 minutes after the oven's been preheated, and make sure that the temperature on the gauge reflects the thermometer. You also, as silly as this sounds and overkill, you might want to buy 2 thermometers and check them both because you could also have a faulty thermometer. All right, I'm going to put these chocolate chips away. I'm going to come back and show you what the cookie dough looks like. All right. So you'll see I actually have 2 different varieties here. I'm working on a couple of different gluten-free test batches, but these are the ones we're going to be baking today. So they've actually gotten a little bit like deeper in color over time, and these are like rock solid. Like they're hard. You can bake directly from this. I actually recommend it. It prevents spreading, and it gets that perfect gooey interior and crispy edges on the cookie. So I always use parchment paper. Put some parchment paper down. And I'm a little bit of a perfectionist. If y'all know me, you know. So I like to really undercrowd my cookies. I know you can usually get away with like keeping 2 inches between your cookies or measuring as you go and see like how far apart your cookies need to be. But I would always rather take the time to make an extra batch and have my cookies like bleed into each other and come out gross. Gross looking, they're gonna taste great. So I'm only gonna do like 4 or 5 on a sheet. So for cookies this size, these like medium sized, 5 is okay. I'm gonna do 5. You wouldn't really want to do more than that though on one. As you can see, it covers most of this 13 by, what is this? 14 by 18 baking sheet, 13 by 19. I should probably know. I don't. Whatever the like standard sheet cookie tray is. I'm gonna pop these ones back in the freezer. I also have to say that these make the perfect ice cream sandwich cookies. So I'll take like Nadamu or Salt and Straw, some of my favorite vegan ice creams, and put them between these cookies. And they're perfect because they have some of the crisp for the textural contrast. But they're also pretty thin cookies, so they're easy to bite through. And even if you like refroze as an ice cream sandwich, they're not going to be like so hard, rock hard to get through. All right, so the oven's almost preheated. Just got to wait another minute or so. But I'm curious for y'all who are here with me today, what other gluten-free or non-gluten-free, but gluten-free treats would you want me to make? I'm always curious what people are looking for in terms of dietary substitutions. Like, is there something you haven't had in years because you have an allergy, or a food you're trying to avoid, but it's in one of your favorite treats? Let me know what you're interested. Like, feel free to write in the chat or write to me on my Instagram. Always looking for new ideas. I do really want to make gluten-free biscuits. I have a recipe I'm toying with a little bit right now. And I know Crystal mentioned recently doing whoopie pies, which would be so good. I love frosting. I love cookies. Honestly, like whoopie pies are such a good like best of both worlds if you don't want to make a cake. So probably gonna do that soon. And as I mentioned, and you saw like my whole tray of cookies there, I'm working on other varieties of these gluten-free, dairy-free cookies. So I have a vegan one in the works, I have a nut-free one in the works, and I'm really trying hard to make that texture as good as this one. Ooh, Margot asked if there's a gluten-free croissant. I've never made one. I think that would be a really, really fun thing to try. What's really cool, Margot, about croissants is they're really flaky, right? And getting that flake is all about the right butter ratio to your flour. So I have faith that it would work. I think the texture would be a little different. It wouldn't be quite as soft on the inside or airy as a non-gluten-free croissant, but those exist and I can definitely make them with some practice. Great idea, I love it. Very creative. This is almost preheated. The last thing I'll say before I throw these in the oven is that you can put any mix-ins you want in these. You could do the gluten-free Oreos, you could do M&Ms, you could do any of your favorite candies. If you're trying to keep them dairy-free and gluten-free though, of course recommend checking all of your treats before you add them in, but gluten-free Oreos would be a great addition. I also have a really, really incredible chocolate gluten-free cookie that I make. It's more intensive, it does require melting chocolate and folding that into the dough, but it does not need to rest. You actually shouldn't put it in the fridge because it has melted chocolate in it. It'll harden too much. So that's a great cookie recipe if you just want to make something in like an hour. Because you can make that dough fairly quickly, a little more intensive than this, but comes together in maybe 30 minutes. Then you can throw it right in the oven and they're good to go. 3:15, we're so close. We're so close. In the meantime, also want to tell you some exciting things happening with Junk Jules. Working on some new spring specials. You'll notice if you go to my website, junkjules.com, I have a special section. Have some stuff up that's like end of Valentine's, like conversation heart cookies, for example. Like gluten-free cinnamon rolls are up. And now I'm working on some stuff for spring. So working on Passover and Easter treats, as well as just like classic spring stuff we love. So whether it be something with chocolate eggs, jelly beans, which are really hard to put into a bake, but I'm working on it. Or just other things we think of for spring, like sugar cookies with spring color icing, like pastel icing, or chocolate bunny themed things, or carrot cake. I'm working on a couple of new things. Definitely let me know. I'm always open to recommendations, what you're interested in trying for the spring. All right, we are good to go. I'm gonna bake these for approximately 12 to 14 minutes. As a force of habit, I always turn my cookie sheet halfway through. Even if your oven is pretty well heated, like well distributed in terms of heat, I highly recommend turning it. Unless you have a convection oven, there's no way the same amount of heat in the back is like staying consistent with the front. There's always gonna be a little bit of a heat differential. So that means I'm gonna set my timer to 6 minutes and then I'll turn. So I'm also working on a cookbook. I say that I've been working on it for, I don't know, like 10 months. I'm pretty sure I started in April of 2020. We all have these like grand ideals during quarantine, right? I'm gonna pick up this hobby. I'm gonna do this amazing thing that I said I, was gonna do for years. But let's be real, y'all, I'm tired. Like this has been a tiring year for all of us, some more than others for sure. I'm very fortunate to still be working, but it's just tiring being home all day and it's hard to get the motivation after a long day of work to really sit down and stay at a computer and do more. Like I much prefer to spend my evenings and weekends doing this, live streams, recipe testing, interacting with you all, baking for orders. Like I absolutely love that. So Junk Jules cookbook coming soon, but also interested to hear what you all think about if we should do something that's more basics focused for the first cookbook. If it should be focused on things like the perfect chocolate chip cookie, the perfect brownie, the perfect cinnamon roll, or if you want me to go for my more wild and outlandish treats. So should I put in there things that kind of put me on the map, like my junk cookies that are a little more exciting, or maybe helping you perfect your own gluten-free cinnamon rolls, right? The more like challenging or exciting things. I do want to have a couple of different cookbooks because I have so many recipes I want to include that I realize I need to have multiple volumes. Like I initially put out like 30 recipes. I was like, okay, that's a lot. That's overwhelming for me to write. It's overwhelming for you to read. And it didn't feel focused enough. Like there was cakes and bars and brownies and tarts and pies and all these areas. So I'm thinking of splitting it into basics and then the fun stuff, like Fruity Pebbles fruit tart maybe belongs in the fun stuff versus these cookies probably go in the basics. So let me know what you all think. I think a basics one would be great to have variants, right? So like, here's a great chocolate chip cookie recipe. Now here's how to make it vegan. Here's how to make it gluten-free. Here's my famous brownies that everyone loves to order, which I really appreciate. I'll be working on that soon. All right, we've got 3 more minutes before we turn. I actually didn't make as much of a mess, and I didn't even use this. Are we so impressed? We're so impressed. Tell me you're impressed. I'm very happy about that. So I've been watching a lot of YouTube and Twitch streams of other cooking shows to see like what people are doing that's interesting and what else is out there. And I've noticed that like a couple of things keep popping up in all my feeds. One is the like hacks. So yesterday I saw like accordion potatoes or like the 15-hour potato. So things that are like transforming a food into something different. Often really good, but not always better. Just something like interesting and artistic and exciting. Or on the other side of things, it's like how to make a really solid variation on a basic. Like I know Claire Saffetz is doing Dessert Person, and she's like showing you how to make fun twists on classics like chocolate shortbread, as well as like Sola El Wali. I really like her. She does a lot of really great bakes that are like a nod to her upbringing and like the flavors from her youth that she brings into her bakes, which is kind of similar to my concept, just we had different upbringings, so it's really cool to see how she inserts her own experiences into her classic bakes. She's like done a lot of really cool things with spices and cookies that I very much appreciate and admire. All right, this is almost time to turn. See how they're looking? I'm gonna bring you with me. Let me grab the camera. This will be a fun experiment. Let's not drop anything. Hi. All right, come with me to the oven. Let's see, how well can you see? Yeah, okay. Wow, my door looks real dirty. That's great. Hi, everyone. The life of living in quarantine and not being able to clean everything all the time. I swear I cleaned my oven last week. So here's what we're seeing. You can see because the cookie dough is frozen, they're really maintaining their shape well. Like they are really solid domes and they're just starting to spread a little bit. And that's what we want. Like the edges on the outside are gonna get crispy because they've spread a little, but then the centers will stay nice and gooey and won't cook as quickly because they have all of that space. All right, now I screwed up my camera angles. Here we go. Can we fix it? Oh, that's not bad. Fun fact, I went to film school. Can you tell? Probably not. That was also like as wild as it is to think about. That was almost 10 years ago. Yes, I studied film as an undergraduate at the University of Vermont. I graduated in 2012, which time has flown. I like cannot believe that was 9 years ago. And I loved it and I love filmmaking, but I've just been out of practice. I haven't done it in so long. And so live streaming and making YouTube videos is a great way for me to re-engage with it. I do actually really like the editing process, but like I said earlier, I'm a perfectionist. So it often takes me like so long, hours and hours to edit short videos. So got a little bit of backlog right now. You'll notice on my YouTube, I've uploaded all my live streams from Twitch. So I have the Taki Lime Pie, the junk cookies, the vegan Oreo brookies, and I have not created a shortened version of all of them. Like I always upload my live stream in full, and then I cut it down to like a digestible 10 to 15 minute recipe video. So you can watch really quickly if you want to bake it at home or need to refresh yourself on some of the previous steps in the bake. But I'm a little behind. All right, time to turn. Oh my gosh, they smell so good. All right, so we'll go 6 more minutes. And like I said, 12 to 14 minutes. So they might need a few after that. And then I'll show you how pretty they look. Not gonna lie, I ate 3 cookies last night. I was trying out all of my different versions of this recipe. So this one, the vegan version, the gluten-free one, got a taste test. Like you have to taste test. Oh, I said gluten-free, the nut-free one. These are all gluten-free. So do a lot of taste testing. As Crystal, who's been watching, can attest, I bring a lot to the gym, to my chiropractor, to my neighbors. I really love sharing with everyone. So every time I do a test batch, I make sure to give some friends and family, one or two here or there, and then hopefully that also interests them in orders. So I feel like word of mouth and supporting one another is the best way to build a business. I'm a really, really big fan of just like building community through food. That's why I do Junk Jules. I genuinely love making people happy with treats, and especially if they have either a dietary restriction or maybe they have nostalgia for something they can't get anymore. I absolutely love saying like, hey, I got you. I'm going to make this for you. And so that's a big thing I've tried to do. Like Crystal has actually inspired me quite a bit to do more gluten-free, because while I'm not gluten-free, she was for a little while and has friends who are, and knows how hard it is to find really solid gluten-free treats. So it inspires me to push further, to make more than just, okay, here's like a dry, half-assed gluten-free cookie. No, like here's a really good gluten-free cinnamon roll, or here's a really, really good gluten-free brownie. Something where you're not missing out or noticing that an ingredient is different or missing just because you can't have that specific ingredient. So my goal with these cookies is for someone to taste them and say like, nothing, really. Just to say like, these are great. To not say like, oh my gosh, this is like clearly gluten-free, or this is the best gluten-free cookie I've had. No, I want people to taste this and say like, this is one of the best cookies I've had, period. Like this is a classic chocolate chip cookie and I'm not missing anything, or I don't feel like there's a substitute. Oh, hi Craig, community food. Hi Emer. Oh my gosh, y'all, I love having my community join me. This is great. I gotta bring y'all some treats soon. Some of my fellow Michiganders have joined the chat, which I really appreciate. Thank you all for being here. It means a lot. Just have a couple more minutes on those cookies. I have a feeling Crystal might be getting some of these tomorrow. If I have some extras, if I don't eat them all tonight. Craig, next time I see you, I'm bringing you a test batch. And Amy and Margot, I'll send you guys some stuff soon. It's really fun too to have like really supportive friends and family. I really appreciate it, who believe in this business, because I'm also doing Junk Jules in addition to my full-time job. And so it's a lot of work. My goal is one day to have this be my only full-time gig. And we're getting there. I've had a really good end of 2020, early 2021 in terms of Junk Jules. I think we don't celebrate our successes enough and lift ourselves up when we're starting small businesses. So gonna pat myself on the back here. I had more sales really in the holiday period of 2020 to 2021, like over the winter holidays, than I did in almost the whole year prior. So I launched Junk Jules in late 2019, had a series of successful pop-ups that were doing well, but then got cut short due to the pandemic. And I was struggling to find like, where's my place? How do I pivot more to online ordering and shipping ground to the contiguous 48 states? And I did that. And by like December, January, I was making really big orders, and I was going to FedEx with 4, 5, 6, 8 boxes a week. And now it's been pretty consistent. I've had like orders come in almost every week, and it makes me so happy. So thank you all for supporting me and continuing to show up and to tell your friends about it, and give me feedback. I always want feedback to know how to make things better and more to your taste. All right, last minute. Let's see. Okay, I'm gonna take you with me again to show you something, teach you something about my cookies. All right, so I think the biggest mistake that most people make with cookies is over baking. At least that was like something I struggled with and have seen a lot. So you'll see they're starting to flatten out, puff up in the center. This is like absolute perfect stage right here. So as you can tell, they're super light, right? Like they're definitely not done, but I would say they're like only 2 to 3 minutes away from being done. I think many people look at light cookies and say like, oh my gosh, they're so underbaked. That's going to be raw. I can't do it. But that is absolutely not the case. You want to take cookies out as soon as the edges are starting to get golden brown. If you wait any longer than that, you're going to have a much more baked crispy cookie, which if that's what you're going for, that's fine. This is supposed to be a classic chocolate chip cookie where the center is still a little bit gooey. Keep in mind that even when they're cooling, your cookies are sitting on a very hot baking sheet. That metal is going to stay hot for at least 5 to 10 minutes afterwards. So you're still going to be cooking the cookie a little bit more. And just because the center's light doesn't mean it's not baked. That egg and flour is still fully baked. It's safe to eat. It's just going to not be quite as crunchy or dense if you take it out when it's still a little bit light. So you want your cookies to still be kind of gooey in the center, but like have the sheen of raw cookie dough start to go away. So let's see. So that was 12 minutes. I'm going to turn them to check them on the back. All right, I'm going to give them 2 more minutes. So 2 more minutes will put us at 14. As I mentioned, this is typically like 12 to 14 minutes. Then they'll be done and I can show you the finished product. I'm super excited. Really important too, cooling. I get ahead of myself a lot and I start to like eat a cookie while it's hot and it's just falling apart and a mess and I burn my mouth. But if you're patient, literally just 10 or 15 minutes, it will stay together. It will be that perfect, gooey, warm chocolate chip cookie, but then the edges will have time to set and get crisp. I'm definitely gonna eat one of these hot now. Super into like a really fresh chocolate cookie. The great thing about these two is they keep great at room temperature. Just put them in an airtight container or a plastic bag after they fully cooled, like a couple hours later. They will keep for almost a week. I've not been able to keep them around that long. I usually eat them by like the 5-day mark. So I think 5 to 7 days is safe. But you could also freeze them. Again, this dough can stay frozen and bake from frozen. So I would rather you just bake the amount you're going to eat and keep the dough in the freezer, bake more later. But you could also freeze the cookies themselves and then just leave them out for about 10 minutes to defrost, pop them in the microwave for 10 seconds so they get a little gooey. There you go. Also, like a frozen chocolate chip cookie or like an over microwaved gooey one, they're still good. There's like nothing wrong with that. I feel like chocolate chip cookies, if they're like a good dough, good base, it's kind of hard to like mess up storing or reheating or freezing them. They're going to be really good no matter what. All right, last 30 seconds. I often cool my cookies on a trivet, leaving them on the baking sheet. But if I'm worried that the underside's getting a little bit overbaked, I'll pull them off onto an actual cooling rack, like a wire rack. Or if you have a countertop, a surface that's like a hard stone or composite material that can handle high heat, you could just slide the parchment right off onto your counter. Also recommend that. You don't need to buy a wire rack if you don't have one just for cookies. Oh my gosh. These are perfect. I'm so excited. Okay, so as you can see, the centers are still a little bit light. As I mentioned, my oven just got serviced. So what's really interesting is I'm noticing that the center cookie always gets done the fastest. And I don't know. I think it's because something about like the way the heating elements are. The top of my oven has like an open gas broiler. And I just think like something about where the heat comes from that like top element, maybe directing right into the center. So I got to work on like placement on the baking sheet. In the future, I think if you don't, or if you don't, it's my oven, my problem. If I don't want that overbaked cookie, I just wouldn't put one in the center. Because as you can see, the ones on the outsides all look really similar and all have that like little bit lighter center where you can tell it's going to be like really gooey and delicious. All right, I'm going to turn the oven off because I do have a couple more cookie dough balls in the freezer that I could bake, but this is good for now. I will like eat them all through here. Save a couple for Crystal, give a couple to maybe some of my neighbors. But now I also have that extra dough because as you remembered, I put the dough to chill in the fridge for about a half hour. So then I can more easily roll them into balls, sprinkle the salt on top, throw them in the freezer. So I'm going to do that after this live stream. So I have extra cookies. And then tonight or tomorrow or any day in the next couple of weeks, as long as I keep them in an airtight container in the freezer, pop them in the oven. Again, the great thing about this is you can literally just like keep them in the freezer. Make 2 or 3 at a time, however many you want. I wonder if you guys can hear that. My dog was like, "Murr, murr." I'm gonna bring Flapjack up for the finale so you all can say hi to him. He's very sad that he didn't get to participate. I'm gonna grab flapjack. These need a few more minutes. They're, you know, as I mentioned, really soft. And if I took them off right now, they would just like fall apart. But I want you to see what they look like when I like break them open, do the money shot. All right, I'm gonna get flapjack. I'll be right back. Hey, good boy. Do you want to come upstairs? Oh, come on here. Are you gonna be shy? Come on. Come on. Just say hi to the people. Just say hi to the people. Look, it's flapjack. Can I lift you up? No, he doesn't like that. He's also pretty big. He weighs like 65 pounds, so lifting him up's not the best idea. Arvind asked, the cookies look a bit flat. It's because they don't have gluten. No. So I purposefully, oh, that's flapjack. I purposefully make these cookies to be like a classic bakery cookie. Sorry, I'll come right back. I'm gonna distract the dog for a moment. So I purposely made these cookies this consistency. They're not totally flat and like crispy, like they're a classic bakery chocolate chip cookie. They're what I think of when I like visit local coffee shops and get those like really round, big, gooey in the center, crispy in the outside cookies. So flatness has nothing to do with gluten. Flatness has everything to do with the ratio of oil or butter to dry ingredients. So if you have a lot more oil or butter, it's more likely to spread if you've mixed it in really well. Also the temperature you bake at. So if you bake something at a lower temperature, it's more likely to spread because it has more time that it's going to take to bake, and it will slowly start to like kind of flatten out. If you bake something at a much higher temperature quickly, the outside will bake quicker, the inside will stay gooey. Pop it out of the oven then. And then the other thing that has to do with flatness is leavening agent. So do you have baking soda or baking powder in it? How much? What is the proportion of that to other flours? So I will say that it's a really good question because gluten-free flour can often be a little more dense than wheat flour. So there is the chance that things could get heavier, sink, flatten out. But for these cookies specifically, I like them this consistency. I know I mentioned earlier in the stream, like part of the reason I freeze them so long before baking is because they will flatten out quickly if you take them right from the fridge to bake. Like you want them to freeze and stay in that like ball shape so they spread a little less quickly. Oh, do you want cookies, Flapjack? Of course my dog has like a sweet treat name, right? Can I lift you up? Oh, yes. This is Flapjack. Doesn't he look like a seal? Are you a little seal? Hi, little seal. Hi, say hi to the camera. When I'm saying hi, I think someone's outside. Okay. Oh my goodness. What a pup. Oh, I love that. I like that emoji. Yeah, this is my dog. He's, like I said, part of the reason I didn't keep him up here while I was doing the live stream is this. He's like, what are you doing? What are you doing? Pay attention to me. I'm gonna get him one more treat and then we're gonna taste these cookies. So we work on tracking. I'll like put things around the house and he'll go find them. I'm gonna do that real quick. Thanks for bearing with me, y'all. I know many of you watching have dogs, so you get it. When they are needy, they are needy. All right. I think we're about ready to try these. I am so excited. I love these. I don't usually eat my first meal of the day until like around noon because I was streaming right at noon. I have not eaten anything. So this is my Sunday breakfast, which I think is amazing. Absolutely appropriate. Ooh, which one do I want? I think I want this one. Okay. So you see, even just after like 10 or 15 minutes, they are perfectly solid. I can hold them up like this. They're not falling apart. I love these. They smell so good. They smell a little bit nutty from the almond flour. Super chocolatey. See, the center is gooey. Look, the center's kind of like falling out a little. Oh, I love that. Big and little chocolate chips. Because as you recall, I use the mini chips and the regular size semi-sweet chips. So you'll get different like little pockets of chocolate. Y'all, these are so good. Like, Like I said, I'm a perfectionist. And so I like really recipe test to death. Like I've tried making these, I can't even count how many times. But when I found this ratio of almond flour to all-purpose gluten-free flour, and then found like the dairy-free butter that worked, and the temperature that worked, and the freezing mechanism that worked, they're so good. Like, thank you, Arvind. They're cooked perfectly. They really are. Like, they're just golden brown on the bottom, so you get that little bit of crisp. The edges, like, I don't know if you can hear it, but it's crispy. And then the center just like stretches and almost falls apart, but not quite. So I know it's booked, but I'm booked. I know it's cooked, but not overdone at all. Oh my gosh. I have some more time. Yeah, if you can hear that. I need to get a better mic. You all, I wish you all could be here eating these with me. They're so good. Definitely going to share with some of you local folks who I encounter occasionally in a very COVID safe way. I will also note for those of you who watch who eat my cookies and cakes and pastries and pies, or are interested in ordering them on junkjules.com for shipping or local pickup. When I'm not on a live stream, I do wear a mask the whole time I bake and the whole time I package. I'll also have you note that I'm fortunate enough to have access to free COVID-19 testing, and I do get tested every week. Have not had it, just got tested Wednesday, got my results back Thursday, I'm negative. So I take it very seriously, the fact that I'm preparing food for you all. So I want you to rest assured that we are very, very clean in the Junk Jules kitchen. And even though my oven door looks a little spotty, I clean my kitchen intensely all the time. You can see my counters are sparkling, my backsplash is bright and shiny. Thank you all. I'm gonna try not to eat all of these cookies and try to save some for you all. Excuse me. I left part of his treat there. I'm gonna let him do his thing. Wow. This is bad behavior and I don't want to condone it, but this is really funny. Flapjack. Oh, now you're sitting. Now you're a good boy. All right. Flapjack says thank you guys for joining. Hi, Flap. What a crazy bear. Really appreciate it. Thanks for being here. And this will be up on YouTube. So if you missed any of it, you can watch the full live stream, or I will be editing it down to about a 10 to 15 minute recipe video. So if you want to reference this and bake it at home, again, this was a half batch. It will typically make about 8 moderately large cookies, so these size. But beyond that, you can make a double recipe, make a triple recipe, make a quadruple recipe. These do well cutting it back or increasing. I've done both ways. Thank you again. Next time, I think I'm going to do something a little more wild where we do something with these. Gluten-free Oreos. We're going to give them a try. If you find these, let me know what you think. Interested to hear if you like them as much as I do. Again, I give those a 9 out of 10. And I'm going to eat all these cookies. I'm just going to own it. I will see you all later. Thanks again for being here.